I'm ready.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy AJ, and we are back with another episode of Nerd Talk. This is like a little side quest of Nerd Talk. Me and Kevin, my guest here, Kevin, we we're One Piece watchers, and I know both of us have explored the manga, and we're kind of reading through it right now, and we checked out Netflix live action One Piece, and we are here to talk about it, kind of get into spoilers, kind of get into, what we liked, what we disliked about it. And I am pumped to get into this. Kevin, what's going on, man?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about this
yeah,
little talk here.
yeah. Me too. I don't know, man. I was very skeptical going in, so that just brings us to the first tab here. Um, our thoughts going in. I will say, going into the series, I was very skeptical because, as far as live action anime adaptations go, man, we've been burned. We've seen it time and time again. We've been burned. Dragon Ball Evolution, Cowboy Bebop. Now, Cowboy Bebop wasn't horrible. It just wasn't very good. And then we have uh, Ghost in the Shell and things like that, and just never really like a great adaptation for anime. So I was skeptical going in. What about you? How are your thoughts going in to the live action?
Um, I think it was right around when um I was halfway through the series when they first said, "Oh yeah, this live action thing is a real thing," and I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know, because you think about Netflix. Netflix is already isn't all that great with just shows in general nowadays.
Hmm.
Now you got a studio that recently had two more realistic animes they had a chance to
Hmm.
adapt, Death Note and Cowboy Bebop,
Oh
and they
yeah, Death Note.
absolutely bombed it. And they
Yes.
absolutely bombed both those series,
Yeah.
both for many different reasons, but they still bombed.
Hmm.
And so when you look at One Piece, this is a series that, for all intents and purposes, should not have worked. It is
Yeah.
not a series that should work. I was very skeptical when I heard the announcement. Not even skeptical. I'll be honest. I was dismissive of this entire thing. I was like, you know what, man? All right. I still have my anime. I still have my manga. I'll ignore this.
Right.
They'll
Right.
probably just do a dog shit. Then the trailers came out, and I was quite intrigued. I was still trying to keep my optimism low,
Hmm.
but I think what really hit it for me was when we started seeing all the promotion of them mainly caring about the original source material. You had the original voice actors from the anime coming back to dub the Japanese version of this show. You had Iñaki, the actor of Luffy, visiting Japan and meeting the voice actress for Luffy and the Eiichiro Oda. Is like seeing that and then seeing the trailers vastly improved from trailer to trailer. I was getting really hyped. So,
Yeah.
you know, when they first announced it, I was very dismissive. I was like, this is not it.
Hmm.
But when the show came out, I was excited. I was really excited to hop into it. And I'm happy to say I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah, I like what you were saying about the promotions and stuff like that. They are really, really heavy on the promotions with this show. Like every day you'll see like the actors doing like playing games, like different games, with each other and stuff like that. You see the actors, like taking photos on set and like kind of like pranking each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of promotion going on with this show, and
I
I
think
don't
it's
know
because
what
yeah,
were you
sorry.
saying. No, no, no. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I think it's because Netflix knew um their traction so far.
Hmm.
Like I feel like the executives know that, because of how badly they fucked up and how badly live action adaptations are in general,
Hmm.
um, everyone was very dismissive of it. So I think this was them trying to say, hey, we can, let's show them that we care.
Yeah.
And that I think that's why the promotion was as heavy as it was. Because if live action adaptation wasn't like in such a turmoil, I think that the promotion wouldn't have been this big for them.
Yeah, and this much, I feel like it's just
A lot.
yeah, quantity wise, like I feel like every time I open Instagram, there's a new video of the actors like hanging out or like talking to each other, playing different games and stuff like that. And I think another thing that really helps with the promotion is the how the actors interact with each other, and like it really feels like they have chemistry in real life, um
What
it
I found
on and
hilarious
off the screen.
was, yeah, um, I found it hilarious. Some of them had different interactions that kind of matched their characters to an extent.
Yeah,
Iñaki is just very out there, very happy.
yeah.
Mike Kenyu, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the actor for Zoro. He's
hmm
very, he looks very reserved in a lot of the interviews and stuff we've seen of him.
yeah.
And the actor for Usopp, I forgot his name. Um, he seems excited as well. Like all the actors are presenting themselves like as if they are the characters from real life. So
hmm
you know, that stuff is like really appreciative for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. It's dope. And it's fun to see. It's kind of funny. But like you said, the actor for Luffy went to Japan, met with the voice actress for Luffy, and that I was like, yo, they
They
better
can't
not
fail.
mess this up, bro.
They
They
can't fail
better
now.
not, because like they're putting this much care and this much, thought into, the production and the advertisements and marketing and all that. Like you got to do this right. And I guess
And they
the premiere
even
was last week,
there
right?
was a
And
bunch of premieres.
yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah,
premieres, and Oda showed up to one of them.
showed up to the one in
Kind of just
LA, which I
yeah,
found was hilarious.
that is pretty hilarious. And we actually got him out here to the states, and
Yeah,
yeah, I guess he approves. So you know
you know,
that says
I
something.
was gonna touch on that. He actually went in. He was apparently played a big role in the production of this,
hmm
and we've seen in some letters that he wrote to the magazine of the manga.
hmm
He said, I wanted some scenes to be reshot so that way um, so it could be perfected to the biggest extent. He also said like one of the conditions of making the live action was he didn't want any romance between the Straw Hats at all, like nothing implied of it or anything,
hmm
which I thought was a very interesting request to make. A good request, but it's just a
I think
weird
it's
thing
a
for him
good.
to
I
say.
think it's a good request, and I feel like with live action, you are kind of prone to like make something of a romance between the characters, things
Yeah.
like that. And I honestly thought I was gonna see like some romance like between some of the characters. We'll get into that a little
Oh.
bit later. Not amongst the crew, but like
Oh.
yeah,
Well,
between
no, no, no.
some of the
His
other characters.
his condition was more amongst the crew. If it
Yeah.
was the crew with anybody else, that's a different thing. But it was mainly amongst the crew, like Luffy and Nami. They didn't want anything of the two connections, but I guess that's just
Yeah,
how
like
it wants to
and
go.
and there wasn't really ever any of that in the anime. Um
Yeah.
and by the way, I think I said that earlier, but we both watch the anime. We know, we kind of have like a basis of knowledge of the lore and the story and stuff like that. So it would be kind of interesting to talk to some people that have not seen the anime or don't know anything about the original series and see how they felt about this series. Um, but yeah, so we're gonna get right into the story of the series. Pretty much it lines up exactly like the anime and the manga. There are some differences. I think there are some characters that have more shine than they do in the original series. But for the most part, everything lines up, and I thought the story was dope. I thought it was very well put together, and a nice rendition of it. What did you think?
Um, I enjoyed the story a lot. I think
hmm
that I had to come into I told myself coming into this show, I was like, I'm gonna keep an open mind because condensing what is in the manga about 100 or 90-ish chapters and what is in the anime about 50, probably even less than that, probably like 40 something episodes into an 8-hour show. That's a very difficult task on its own. So I
Hmm.
was like, let me keep an open mind. Maybe that they're doing some creative differences. And for the most part, I was very much in love with how they did the story.
Hmm.
Um, I liked how, aside from Sanji, but everyone else's, their backstories are kind of cut up and kind of spread throughout the episode where they were the primary focus. Luffy's being spread out across 2 episodes. I was actually a little bit in disagreement with that, but I think that's just more of how they pace the story.
Hmm.
Um, Zoro's was a weirdly placed one, but it still worked.
Hmm.
As like when you as far as cutting them up, but as far as pacing the story, I felt they did a good job. My one big complaint with the story was that um, really stems from Garp and Kobe, like their little
Yeah.
subplot throughout this
Yeah. That
story.
was.
Um,
I was gonna bring that up
there's yeah,
for sure.
there's nothing. I don't have any disdain towards it. I'm not gonna sit here and say I hate it,
Hmm.
but it really didn't help this series at all. Especially
Yeah.
when you're already condensing a long story, adding in an entire subplot, but also making it kind of an extended one. It's like, where is it gonna fit? For some scenes, it fit really well because I feel like their intent was to show a parallel between Kobe's journey throughout the show and
Hmm.
Luffy's journey throughout the show.
Yeah.
But then in episode 4, they had them meet, and I was like, that's a weird way to do that. Um, if you were going to pull this intent of having them be parallels to each other, you should have had them meet at the end of the show
Hmm.
before Luffy set off for the Grand Line and before Kobe decided that he was going to be trained by Garp. But um, and there are a lot of different scenes where I was just like, they were either prolonged, like made longer than they should,
Yeah.
or just completely unnecessary. Like for
Hmm.
example, in episode 5, we learned that Mihawk is a warlord of the sea.
Hmm.
Essentially, that he is a pirate, but he was not. Um, he's been given permission by the government to do whatever he wants as long as he does things also for the government. And Kobe had this little plot line where he wasn't so keen on the idea of having pirates work for the government because they're supposed to be the guys we're supposed to catch.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, that was a good way to show it. It didn't really add anything to the story. And overall, there were a lot of scenes that I was just like, we don't need this. This talk
Yeah.
isn't necessary.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, again, I don't have any disdain towards that. I understand what they were trying to go for, but it didn't hit the nail as hard as it should.
Hmm.
Um, my other you could talk about it if you want, and I'll go to my next point.
Yeah. So as far as the Kobe and Garp storyline, and even Helmeppo, just all of that, I felt it. That's new stuff. We don't
I
really
didn't even
have.
say Helmuppa.
Yeah, like he was
Helmuppa
kind of
had
like
nothing to do with it.
irrelevant.
He
Yeah,
was
he
just
was
a
kind of.
dickhead.
Yeah, he was just kind of irrelevant, and I kind of understand what they were doing with this because this is all like new stuff. If this could have happened behind the scenes, like some of this stuff could have happened behind the scenes, with Garp and all that, but like this stuff is new to the lore. So seeing Kobe and Garp have like this kind of relationship, and it wasn't bad like you said, but it was also felt really dragged out in some areas. And like whenever they showed up on screen, I was like, let's get back to Luffy, let's get back to the Straw Hat crew because I'm not really feeling this. So
Yeah.
like I said, it wasn't bad. It was just kind of like something that it was just kind of like we didn't really need it. So that was how I felt about that particular storyline. um as far as I wanted to like touch on the backstory, did you have something specific you wanted to talk about
Um,
first?
it was mainly
Yeah,
on
go
the
ahead.
beginning of the show
Yeah, go ahead.
because I
Hmm.
felt like some of the backstories placements. Two of them one of them I had a big issue with. One of them I didn't have an issue with, but I felt like could have been done better.
Hmm.
Um, Zoro's placement in the backstory was very, very odd
It
because
was.
this isn't in the 2 episode arc that they had. it was supposed to be highlighting Usopp, who I
Mm-hmm.
felt didn't get enough shine as he should have in the anime, um, in the in the live
In live
action.
action. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Zoro's placement was just weird because his arc, like his backstory, only uplifted his arc to climb up a well. And I was just like, that's a
Yeah.
weird spot to put it. Like,
Yeah.
if you weren't gonna put it earlier in the show where it was in the anime, at least put it in the very next episode, which was episode 5 when he fought Mihawk. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that could have advanced his motivation to become the world's greatest swordsman. But I
Mm-hmm.
think how to fix what they could have done is how they also would have fixed my little gripe with Luffy's backstory, where I felt like them dragging it through 2 episodes was a little bit much because I feel like um, his backstory could have should have been the very first thing, and I thought they could have pulled The Last of Us, because The Last of Us had a format where the first half they had an hour and a half. The first half hour was like a flashback with Joel's kid, and it kind of went through that,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that point, it had like an hour of legitimate content,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I feel like that could have they could have pulled off that same format with the first episode, make that an hour and a half, take all of Luffy's backstory, drag it, have it be the beginning of the story, and then cut back, and then we see the stuff with Alvida and Axe and Morgan throughout that first
So
episode.
you're saying that first episode you would want it to be an hour and a half?
Yeah, just
Okay.
basically just keep the same format, have all the backstory stuff in the same chunk in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then episode 2, they had an interesting story where they took Zoro and Nami away from Luffy, and I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, this is where Zoro's backstory could have been. Because it could
Yeah.
have enhanced his character and also kind of enhanced his faith with Luffy. Because he
Mm-hmm.
even said in the episode, he was like, "Oh, do you really believe in him? I don't have to."
He believes in
He believes
himself.
in himself,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he also mentioned like, "Oh, I thought I didn't have a path, but Luffy changed that." And I'm just like, well, I don't really feel that in the live
Mm-hmm.
action
Yeah.
because we don't know his story,
Yeah, we didn't get
and
that story until
Luffy,
after he was saying all
yeah,
that stuff. Yeah.
like the Zoro only said, "I want to become the world's greatest swordsman" to Luffy in the first episode, and that was all we got from them. And I felt
Mm-hmm.
like his backstory could have upped his
Mm-hmm.
own motivation and upped his feelings towards Luffy, because then he would have started to understand himself. Okay, this is who Luffy is. I want to, maybe I've been doing things the wrong way, and I
Mm-hmm.
think this is the guy I should be following.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my little thing with that. Other than that, Usopp didn't really have a backstory, but his little thing was cool.
Mm-hmm.
Nami's backstory I felt like was paced perfectly in episode 7,
Mm-hmm.
and Sanji had a great backstory
I think yeah.
placement. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I thought all the backstories were written well. Acted is a little different. I
I was
we'll
for
get into
me.
the actors next on the next tab,
Yeah,
but yeah, as far as the story, I think they were written well. What were you saying?
um, I was gonna say I felt like Sanji and Nami's kids actors were probably done the best as
Mm-hmm.
far as acting wise.
Mm-hmm.
Luffy was, I'll be honest, Luffy was. This is not the same Luffy. Not even like story wise, just like actor,
Mm-hmm.
accent wise.
Mm-hmm.
This is not
Yeah.
the same person.
Yeah.
Zoro's felt very stale, kind of
Yeah.
random. Um, Usopp didn't really have that much of a backstory, so I can't really speak much on the actor
Mm-hmm.
for Kid Usopp, but he didn't bother me. That was just my thing.
Well, since we're talking about it, let's get into characters and backstory and characters and actors. We talked about the backstory, the actors for the backstory. Karina, as you know, Karina and Zoro, both of their actors I did not love. And it was kind of disheartening because that's like my favorite backstory of any of the Straw Hats. I love Zoro's backstory. I love Karina, their whole promise to each other to become the best swordsman, who ever lived. And then, we get her death, and he's screaming and crying and tears coming down, and he's like, the heavens will hear my name. And like, we didn't get any of that. Like, we didn't feel any of that. So
And
that was the biggest disappointment for me in the series, I think.
yeah, and it's funny because last night while we were catching up with the anime,
Mhm.
we saw a rendition or
Yeah.
a repeat of Zoro's backstory. So it was more of a refresher for us
Yeah.
just to get a comparison to.
Yeah.
And immediately I recognized why the Zoro backstory in the live action felt kind of iffy for me. It's
Mhm.
because the kid, I don't think it's an age thing. I know
Mhm.
I think I saw someone somewhere say, "Oh, it's an age thing. You know, kids are more emotional." You could have done the emotion with teenagers. I don't think that's an
Mhm.
issue. Um, but there wasn't enough emotion pulled from Zoro and Kuina.
Mhm.
They're both their kid actors, where I was just like, you're
Yeah.
just stale.
They're kind of
You know,
stale.
yeah. And in in the live action, it was funny because he was like, "I'm gonna be." When he was telling Kuina, like, "Bro, that sounds like an excuse to me."
Mhm.
He was just like, "Bro, that sounds like an excuse to me. Why you're doing this? You
Mhm.
sound weak. You want to become the world's greatest swordsman. You're
Yeah.
my drawback." I
Goal.
was
Like,
just
yeah,
like,
you were my goal.
"Yeah, you're a goal."
And yeah. Everything that they were saying was right. Like, it was all
Yeah.
written well, but it was just came down to the performances with that.
Um, but let's not get enough on the kids. Let's talk about the actual adults who played
Yeah,
these
yeah,
actors. Um,
we get into that for sure.
my favorite one is not Iñaki. For me, it's my Kenyu as Zoro. I
Mm,
loved how they did him. Um, my As far as acting wise, he was really good. My only issue is that they did make him more somber than he was in the anime. Because while in the anime he was very serious and very he knows what you feel like you know what he's doing. He also had like emotional side to him where he tells Luffy, "Listen, I'm gonna be the world's greatest swordsman. You better not fuck that up for me." We didn't get
mhm.
that. Granted, we didn't get that line at all in in the live action,
No, we didn't.
um, but up until his fight with Mihawk, we didn't feel any kind of emotion from it. And I don't blame the actor. I feel like that's just more of a writing decision because I don't think he was written in a way that I was like he's supposed to also be an emotional person.
Yeah, he was written
He
very
was
stoic
yeah.
in this, especially
Um,
the first half
and I
before
did
the fight with Mihawk.
but that's my only gripe. For me, I still really enjoyed how he portrayed Zoro. He's a guy who's very serious. He wants to become the world's greatest swordsman. His actions prove that.
Hmm.
So I very much enjoyed his performance. Usopp, I forgot his name. Forgive me. He was also pretty good. He was also pretty good. I liked his charisma in the show, and it was like an injection of that charisma, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but everyone else I felt like was also good. Iñaki was a really good Luffy.
Hmm.
Um, I had the names up actually for this person, Emily Rudd as Nami. I really enjoyed her.
Oh, hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have a feeling towards her,
Yeah,
and
I definitely do. I think that Nami was done absolutely perfectly. I don't have any notes for Nami.
oh
As far as her backstory, as far as the performance, as far as how she is written and how how she kind of is doesn't really trust them, but she also yearns
like
for a
she's connecting
family.
with
She's
them. Yeah,
connecting with them, but is kind of afraid to commit. And then by the
yeah.
end, we get that special moment, at Arlong Park that in the anime was it wrecked the fans of One Piece that at
It
Arlong
almost wrecked
Park.
me a little bit when
Hmm.
she was yelling out Arlong. My only issue is that I feel like that could have been a lot longer. She stabbed herself
Mm,
twice, and then it ended. I was like, "No,
yeah,
you
she stabbed
almost
her
had me, bro.
when she
You
stabbed
had
herself
me."
in the shoulder.
She only did it twice, and then boom, we get to Luffy, and I was like, "No, you had me, bro."
Oh, it had me. I don't know.
No,
I can't.
it had me. No, it
Yeah.
had me already, but it was like it was going from like little tears to like I was about to ball out if it had
Yeah.
prolonged itself a little bit. I was like, no,
Yeah. Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I have no notes on
Yeah. I
her.
have no
She,
notes. And
that
like
was great.
and like even with some of the other actors or some of the other characters, I have very few. Like the ones with Luffy. I think the actor is very charismatic. I love the actor how charismatic he is. Some of the line delivery and like some of the pauses and like just the little nitpicky things, I was like, it could have been delivered a little better than that. Same with Usopp, and yeah, same with Usopp, and some with Zoro too. Um, these are new actors, right? They're not really in much, right?
Um, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I just found out today that apparently McKenyu, like a couple years ago, he was part of some show or a movie series, but
Mm,
that's like lesser known. That's not a big
hmm.
time thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But other than that, I don't remember. I don't recall these actors having been in anything.
Hmm.
But I think that's just more of them trying to find the right people and not just picking names to pick names.
Right.
Um,
And I oh well, this is something we didn't really touch on. I love how there's not really anybody notable, like no actors that we really know in this,
the
world or in this
Yeah, the
casting.
only notable actor I can recall is the narrator for this show. I forgot who he was.
Who is it?
I forgot his name. It was somebody I believe from John Wick's series.
Mm,
The guy
okay.
who runs the Continental. I believe he was the narrator for that original one.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure he was a big name when he got announced. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is! Are you kidding me? You got
Hmm.
him on it?"
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, my um there is one actor that
Hmm.
got fucked up badly. Granted, he didn't do much in the live action. He didn't do much in the original story at this point. Ben Beckman, the first mate for Shanks.
Oh,
Who the
yeah.
fuck did they cast for him?
Yeah, it was just
they
some
casted some.
random.
They casted some dad with a beer belly off the
Yeah, they went
street
to
and was
yeah
like, "You're Ben."
they went to Dunkin' Donuts and they was like, yeah, you'll do. Come on. He said, huh? But yeah, he didn't really. I don't even think I saw him in the live action. I just kind of like I missed it. You sent me a picture of him, and I was like, I don't even know really who this is. But but
Okay,
yes.
so before you
Hmm.
continue, sorry.
Hmm. No,
I
you
was
good.
right, and I got the name Ian McShane.
Oh yeah, Ian
He
McShane.
played the guy who ran the Continental
Yeah, I
in
didn't
John
even
Wick.
know that he narrated it. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
That's cool.
well, he narrated the first bit, but
Hmm.
um, when his name brought up, I was like, "What?
Yeah,
Really?"
that's dope.
Um,
And Kobe, the actor who plays Kobe, was actually in Evil Dead Rise earlier this year. The brother Danny in Evil Dead
uh,
Rise. So, but that's pretty much
little
it.
sprinkles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I
Um,
feel like that's just a very small role too. So
yeah. Um, Speaking of Kobe, his I felt like his actor was really good. I
you did
really,
okay.
he really, I didn't. I liked how they didn't change him to be like the same kid from the show where he was just like hyper, just like very scared, hysterical, and they made him kind of like, okay, here's, you know, he's a guy who just can now finally realize his dream of
Hmm.
becoming a Navy Marine. And now he's navigating all this. He's learning different things new for the first time. He learns what a warlord is. He learns who Garp is. And I really liked his connection with Garp. Like I said,
Hmm.
some of the scenes with him and Garp are really well done, especially that chess scene in the second episode. That was a really cool sequence.
Hmm.
And um, yeah, for me, I really enjoyed him. Shank's actor was performance wise, I loved it. Looks wise, I could not get into it.
I
Uh,
agree. I completely agree
I
with that.
can't blame him. I get it. The show, like first and foremost, is always the performance for me. So performance wise, I have no notes on him. He was really good.
Hmm.
It's just the looks. I can't take him seriously. But
Yeah.
sometimes I can't take him seriously. There are some moments where I was just like, yeah, that Shanks right there. But there are a lot of moments where I was just like, who the fuck are you,
The
bro?
CVS Shanks. Yeah, but I didn't have any issues with that actor other than the looks. I think he was fantastic as Shanks.
um, While we're still on characters, one
Hmm.
issue that I did have, I felt like Sanji's character didn't have a little bit of a stumble. Um,
He had
because
what?
aside from a little bit of a stumble, because aside from
Oh.
Usopp, Nami, and Zoro, they all had very compelling reasons to join Luffy. But Sanji, while he did have enough of a compelling reason, I felt like wasn't shown enough. Because in the manga, when Zoro fought Mihawk, there was a big debacle in the live action where they were just like, "Why are you doing this?" Like Nami's just like, "Why are you doing this? Are you gonna you're really willing to die for your dream right there?
Hmm.
That sounds like an idiotic move." And Luffy said, it's for his dream. I can't stop him from doing that. I would rather him not to, but I can't stop him from
Mhm.
following his dreams if it's really what he wants to do. I felt like Sanji should have been there, kind of listening on with that
Mhm.
conversation because it really makes us think. Because especially throughout these 2 episodes, he was adamant on like he can't leave the Baratier because he feels like he owes it to Zeph
Chef
to
Zeph.
stay there.
Yeah.
That's just my little
But
thing.
he's
I
not
feel like
doing
he
what
should
he
have been there.
they did show how he wasn't doing what he loved. He was
Yeah, yeah.
serving and he didn't want to do that. He wanted to make
He didn't even like the
cuisine
food they were cooking.
yeah, he didn't.
Yeah.
He wanted to make exquisite cuisine. And
Um,
like when
like I
he's
said, I
yeah,
felt
when he
like that. Yeah. But I felt like that little moment would have really pulled him for the Straw Hats specifically because
mhm,
everything else they show pulled him towards the Straw Hats, but it also could have pulled him to like any other ship,
mhm,
any other pirate who comes along and says, "Come with us, we got this."
right.
Um, so that's what I felt like should have been a little bit of a nitpick, but other than that, I think everyone else's motivations to join in Straw Hats was done very well.
Mhm,
Um, I do feel like Usopp as well adapted as Syrup Village was because I felt like that was the best adapted arc.
mhm.
Out of the entire show, Kuro was great. His actor, I felt like was really good. I really
Kuro
enjoyed him.
was good. Yes, I agree.
Um, I do feel like Usopp should have gotten more shine um, to the arc, you know,
Hmm. Okay.
because throughout the first episode and then the second episode, he was kind of just he was scared. He didn't know what to do. So I felt like that would have been a moment for him to do something to help the situation and not just help Kaya sneak away to safety. That's what I felt like should have been added. Like I said, a lot of these things could have been fixed if you just eliminated all the time you spent with Garp and Kobe and just
Mhm.
added replace those
Yeah,
scenes with
yeah,
more
with
Usopp, more Sanji,
straw
more
hat.
Straw Hat stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree
Other
with
than
that.
that, I feel like everything else was done pretty well.
Hmm.
I really enjoyed that.
How do you feel about Mihawk in the
He was
series?
great.
Hmm.
He was a
What do you think
surprise
about
to
his
me. I
look?
really enjoyed
What
him.
do you think about his look with
He
the
looks awesome.
contacts and
He
the
looks
beard? And
he looks awesome.
I
I was
thought so too.
surprised how well. Granted, I don't think I'm pretty sure that look would have nailed live action. Like I didn't think I have a problem with this look, but just the way that he presents himself, it feels like Mihawk. He feels
Hmm.
like a guy who'd rather not trouble himself. Like he even like, and then you got that one quote where Don Krieg was just like, "Why are you doing this for us?" And Mihawk's like, "You woke me from my nap, bro. I guess you're doing all this." Speaking of
Don
how
Cre-
he fights, not Don Krieg. I'll get to
Oh,
him in
okay.
a moment.
Yeah,
Um,
we can talk
Mihawk,
about that.
I really actually we'll get into that later. That's not a character thing. Let's get to Don Krieg.
Yeah,
um,
or the lack thereof.
he his character didn't really mess with me
Hmm.
in the original. Like him not being there didn't really do anything for me. Um, so I didn't really care if he was just a throwaway for Mihawk in that scene as an introductory scene. I
Hmm.
do feel like that there should have been more um, of a villainous presence in Baratier.
I
If
agree.
not Don Krieg, we see Arlong show up. Arlong probably should have been there a lot earlier than he was, and I felt like that would have been made it just as an equal impact for Sanji joining the crew because Don Krieg was only there to serve as a leeway to uplift Sanji to join the crew. So even though I didn't care for his character, his replacement didn't really do much
Hmm.
um, for much of anything. So it's not really a Don Krieg thing. It's more or less just a lack of a villainous presence in Baratier that I
Yeah,
was disappointed by. But other than that, I don't care for his character. So the fact that he was a throwaway was absolutely
you didn't
hilarious.
care. You don't care for Don Craig. Don
Him as a
Craig.
character, no,
I
he
I
gets his at
he does. I liked that fight though between him and Luffy on the
no.
Baratier.
Like I said, yeah, but like I said, you can replace him with any other villain. If you had Arlong kind of in the same spot, or one of his fishmen in the same spot, you could have had the same effect as like good fight sequences, good character moments to pull Sanji towards the crew. Um, so like I said, like Don Krieg, I felt like was replaceable, so I didn't mind that.
Hmm.
But his replacement wasn't well suited enough to replace him.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a lower version of that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, that's just. That's just me.
Um,
Um,
Arlong, what do you think about Arlong?
he was dope. I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we first saw him in the trailer, I was like, okay, okay. He's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
he's
His
he's
look is
dope.
good. Yeah, his look is good. His look is really good.
I'm shocked that they nailed his look.
Mm-hmm. Me
Practical
too.
effects go so far.
I think he
Because
was the one I was most nervous about going
my
in.
immediate thought went to CGI when talking
Yeah,
about how he would look in the anime. I
right.
didn't think that they would show him like practical effects at
Practical.
all.
Yeah, they got him practical,
Um,
and it looks good.
yeah, um, makes me excited that God for somehow this show gets beyond halfway through the series when we get to see more fishmen show up. Um, I'm sure they'll nail that look, but overall, the Fishman's look really. They look all of them really look really good. Um,
Yeah.
looks
Yo,
really
no Hachi,
fascinating.
bro. No
Uh,
Hachi. What do you think about
I
that?
um I don't want to spoil for those who might not have been that far, but Hachi didn't he didn't play enough of a role in Arlong Park for me to be upset that he's not here. But I do wonder how they will approach him when he gets there, if he's even there. Are they just gonna
Yeah.
have him be like, "Oh yeah, he was in the background the whole time"?
I think
Even though
they
that would have
just
been convincing, but
yeah.
again, it's just kind of one of those like, how
I,
do you approach that?
yeah.
But again, if this series gets successful enough to get there, we'll get there when we get there. That's
Yeah.
my mindset for now.
Yeah. I
Um,
feel like Hachi being introduced in the anime at Arlong Park it really set a seed for that character's redemption later on in the series, and we're not gonna have that in live action. I don't believe that they're gonna bring this character into the live action universe, but that's
I
something
mean, I feel
that's
like it
that's
was
kind of
important
huge.
because I do feel like it was important for him to be there,
Hmm.
considering what happens in the story.
Yeah,
Granted, they could probably just replace him with one of the other two fishmen, the primary two fishmen that were there.
yeah,
Um, but again, it's a navigation of we'll get there when we get there. If this show
yeah.
somehow
If
is
if
successful
we
enough to
get
get
there,
there, yeah.
right,
If we get there, we'll get
right.
there when we
We're
get
getting a
there.
little ahead of ourselves with that,
Yeah,
but yeah, for sure. Um, Trying to think of any other characters that we didn't talk about. Um,
Buggy.
oh,
We
how we
had the
not
weird
talk
difference.
about Buggy, man?
Um, you are. I don't know. I know you feel differently, but
I do.
I loved him. I
Hmm.
loved him in that episode. He was awesome. He gives off that creepy vibe, but also he's still a jokester, and I felt like he was uh, very well casted for me. I felt like for
Hmm.
me, he was very awesome in the
Hmm.
show. I didn't have an issue with him, even when he showed up again. I was just like, "Give me more. I'll take him."
He was
Like,
a standout
I
for you.
yeah.
Um, do you feel like in this series he has more of a significance at this part of the story in the
It
live
doesn't
action
really
than in the anime?
it didn't really bother me. He had his own arc as a villain, but it never shows up again until later on in the story.
Hmm.
So it didn't really bother me that he showed up just for a reason for the Straw Hats to get to Arlong Park, because that was a big part of why he
Hmm.
showed up later on in the story. So again, I he's the person I didn't have an issue with. I didn't take issue with him still being there, still showing up throughout the series. He's fun. I'm sure he'll probably be played as an anti-hero from here on out. I think that's what
Probably.
they were trying to go for, but
Yeah.
um, that's probably my only issue. Like they played him off as an anti-hero, even though that in when he showed up, he was very much a villainous person. Like he was not a good person. But
Right.
again, we'll see how they navigate that.
Hmm. I feel like that's pretty much all the characters. I think we talked about all
Yeah.
of them. Let's move on to the set and wardrobe. Man,
Highlight of the show.
oh
No,
man.
no notes. That's it. No notes.
Man, oh man. When
What
it comes to the wardrobe and just how the set looks and how much care and detail was put into this series,
listen,
it
man, for
it kind of
for a
takes my
setting
breath
that
away.
was for a setting that was only gonna last two episodes, I do not fault the Netflix for promoting Baratier, how it looks as much as they did. It only
Yeah.
shows up for those two episodes. We'll never see it again. So I will not fault them for gassing that place up. That look Baratie is probably my favorite set that they showed in the show.
Um,
It was fantastic. I loved how it looks. We see like a bunch of radiant lights coming out of the
mhm,
mouth of the Bratier,
mhm,
really illuminating that place. And
mhm.
it was just awesome. I loved how everything looks. I really have no notes for this. There's nothing I can say
Yeah,
about how the sets look. Um,
it had a
I will
budget. I
say
tell you that. It had a budget. You could tell
we'll talk about the CGI later, but if the budget went anywhere, it went to those sets.
the set
They
and
had to build
wardrobe for
all of them.
sure.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's why for me it will guarantee, and we even talked about this off screen. This guarantees itself a season two because
Hmm.
I doubt that they spend all this time and energy and money into creating all these ships, especially ships that will very likely come back. Garp's ship, Luffy's ship, the Going Merry.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure there are a bunch of other locations that will probably show back up again, um,
I
even if they decide
love
not to
how the
keep it.
Mary looks. I love how the every time I see it on
The
screen,
front, the
I
front of the
just
Mary gave that had to grow on me. The front of the Mary that had to grow on me a little bit.
with
Um,
the actual lamb.
yeah, that had to grow on me a little bit because I was like, it looks too detailed, and I was just like,
Hmm.
it reached that for me. It reached the uncanniness just a little bit, but it grew on
Hmm.
me, so I didn't take issue to that.
Okay.
Other than that, I love how Mary looked. It looks awesome.
Hmm.
All the I really like how they filmed a lot of this at sea
Hmm.
with the ships in action. Um, and I'm sure a lot of this was all in one take because God forbid they break the ships. Something
Right.
bad happens and they're like,
They gotta
oh,
rebuild it.
we need to fix it.
Yep.
Um, I will say I don't know if this. I doubt. I'm pretty sure this was all CGI. Like when Mihawk sliced that ship in his intro and they showed it breaking, I
That
doubt. I'm
was
sure that was all CGI, right?
I think it was all CGI, but I was
Um,
like, yo, I
yeah.
can't believe that they made it look so good. They made it look great.
um, yeah. But other than that, like the sets look really good. The
Hmm.
upside down house when they showed Arlong having
Hmm.
lifted the house and they showed the aftermath, that was awesome to see.
Hmm.
Not Sierra Village. I think it was Orange Town. It was called in the anime. They never really gave it a name in the live action, but the town that Buggy was in the live
Oh
action,
yeah.
they showed the destruction. I really like the aesthetics of the clown house that they uh gave it in. I don't know if the mansion, the Kuro Kaya's mansion was a full on mansion. They had that big building to work with. But even at the insides, they look so cool. It gives you that
Hmm.
creepy vibe
Hmm.
that it was going for.
Seller.
And yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's
the sets.
mhm.
I'm astonished. Like when we started seeing behind the scenes sets, and like not recently, but back when the show was still filming, we
Mhm.
started seeing those ships getting built, houses, villages. I was just like, listen, if they're gonna get one thing right, these they look great.
Yeah, so much care and detail were put into those. I love it. I love to see it. Moving on to the cinematography and technical work. So we'll talk about CGI here too. Um, as far as the camera work and the cinematography, I thought it was very well done. Something I did notice though was there was a lot of close-up shots
Mm,
of people's faces, and I don't know if that was like intentional or it was just like the way that they shot it. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes I felt it was a little distracting. I think there was a specific point in time where they like were focusing so close on the faces and like everything behind them was blurred, and I was like, I wonder if they're doing that for a reason. Like if
yeah,
this is a
I don't
significance
know.
to the story, and then it
I don't
turned
think
out
there
not to be.
was.
Yeah, it turned
Yeah,
out not to be. So I
there
was
were a lot
like,
of shots that were significant, like when they showed Zoro tied up at the army base. They showed a
mm-hmm,
close up of him with the sunlight in the background. That was a really good shot of a
mm-hmm,
close up. But then there were also other close ups, like you said, that I was just like, why are you gonna just zoom in on the guy's face like that?
yeah, it was
Like
just
you
kind of like
build
a
great sets, show off the
yeah,
set, bro.
right, right. I think they just kind of wanted to play with the camera work and things like that, and kind of make it interesting. Which it a lot of the shots were interesting. There was a specific transition that I really liked when not when Garp and Kobe were playing the chess game, and I think Garp put down one of the pieces, and like the transition went into a
like a
overhead
fade.
shot of Luffy's hat,
Uh,
and it like kind of transitioned into that, and I dug that. I was like, yo, they're really like the care that's being put into this and the direction that this is going. I love it.
um, yeah. Now, I'm sure with the cinematography and technical work, it would also include action, right?
Yeah, we could
Um,
definitely talk about that.
the action I felt like was done very well, but it was very, very obvious that they're experimenting a lot with Luffy's powers.
Mhm,
As far as everybody else, they did fantastic with it. As far as
mhm,
Sanji's kicking style of his fighting, I felt like that was done very well. Zoro's sword fights were easily any sword fight were easily the best parts of the action in the series. It was awesome to watch. McKenyu, he said himself that he was already well nourished in sword
mhm,
fighting and swordsmanship. It was awesome to see, and even Mihawk's big sword Yoru was awesome when he
mhm.
used it in action. Um, Speaking of Mihawk's sword, we did mention this earlier. I was shocked at how well they did when because in the anime when they do certain attacks with the sword, it gives off on the fact that it's like a long range attack. And in my head, I
Mhm,
was like, I don't know if that's gonna work in the anime,
mhm.
in the live action all that well. But then they showed it with Mihawk. I was like, that looks sick.
You talk about with
It
the ship.
showed, yeah,
I
it
almost stood
showed
up out
like
of my seat.
it showed like little blurs showing the effects of the
Yeah.
sword coming out the ship, and then it hit it. I was like, that looks awesome. If
Hmm.
they show that more um in the future and I'll in the next art in the next season, I will not be upset about that at
Hmm.
that. But everyone else, I felt like was done really well. Nami's stick that she used, she was
Yep.
awesome with it in the first couple of episodes. Usopp's slingshot, um, it was awesome. My favorite
Yeah.
action sequence as far as him as a sniper wasn't really him, it was his father when he was trying to shoot the guy that was holding his mates hostage, like
Hmm.
holding him like that. He didn't get a good
Yeah.
angle,
That
and
was.
then he saw a metal pipe
Yeah.
sling his gun to
Yeah.
the
The
side, shot
ricochet.
it. Bro,
It was
when
the
that happened, I was
ricochet.
like, all right, bro, y'all got it. Y'all
Yeah.
got it. That was
That
gangster.
was dope.
Um, Now obviously the big elephant in the room, Luffy's powers. How was that gonna work? Um, they as far as their first time with it, because I've seen a lot. I know that's gonna be the biggest iffy mark, and it was always a hit or miss whenever they did it. I felt like um, is very they were very experimental with how they could use it
Hmm.
because I felt like unlike swordsmanship, unlike Sanji's kicking style, unlike snipers, unlike big sticks, they have references to use on how to properly utilize those objects. But with Luffy's powers, there is no a prior thing that you can use. Granted, we could have had one with Miss Marvel, but that did not happen.
Yeah.
um,
They decided to go a
but
different route with that.
yeah, um, which I first of all I still commend them for sticking with this because first of all his fruit is very important to the series, but
Hmm.
also just the fact that Luffy's powers are just like very unique, and I'm
Hmm.
glad that they kept it. And like I said, in some shots it looked cool, um, like his final attack against Arlong when
Like
he used
Gatling.
no, not Gatling. Gatling looked good though.
It did.
But when he lifted his feet, a
Yeah.
leg all the way up in the air, and then he smacked him with it. That
Hmm.
was a really cool shot. That,
It was.
in my opinion, um, there were a bunch of other good shots too. But overall, it was kind of like a hit or miss kind of thing, and it was very clear that they're very experimental with it.
Hmm.
So I can't bash them too much because if you're going to do this, you have to try to do it right. And considering it's the first time that we see this kind of power in live action, it's going to be difficult to pull off. Just
No.
CGI work, choreography work. Like, how do you get that to work? For the most part, I felt like they did pretty good with it.
Hmm.
And I hope that if this show does get a season two, they learn from this experience that they
Kind of
had,
fine tune it.
and yeah, fine
Hmm.
tune it. CGI work gets a little better,
Right.
and just overall, just get more in tune with it. And I do hope that they utilize it more because I felt like one of the big things with Luffy is that he's a free person. He can do whatever he wants. So him feeling restricted on how to use his gum powers didn't really fit well with that character. So I do hope that if they can fine tune it well enough to use it,
Hmm.
they should use it more.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like should happen in the next in the next season if it happens. But that's just my opinion. I felt like it was very clear it was very experimental, but they still did a good job, and I'm not upset by how they did it.
Mhm. What did you think about the monster that took Shanks's arm?
Um, that close up shot looked really good when they
Hmm.
showed him like angrily at him. Um, but like, I'm not a big CGI person. Like unless it's like horrifically bad, I'll probably not notice the difference between and like really good CGI. Um, but it looked good. I
Hmm.
really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I was very impressed by when they showed that close up of him staring at Shanks. I all the details that they had in that monster. I was just like, that looks really good. That
hmm,
looked completely different from the trailer. Um,
it did. It definitely did.
um, which makes me believe that rumor that came around that the first trailer, was a year old and that they're only now releasing. I was like that, and now
Yeah,
seeing how that monster looked drastically different, I was like, I can believe that. I
yeah.
will
They they
100% believe
had
that.
time to fix and
Yeah,
make things look better with that.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you. I love that scene. That scene is a huge part of the series and the lore. So I really wanted them to get it right, and they got it right. It's like it's just an
yeah.
arm, Luffy. man, man, it's just an arm.
I was
So
surprised at how well. I'm sorry. I'm surprised at
you're
how
good.
well they did Zoro's three sword style because
Yeah, I agree.
um,
I
they
was
really
like,
took some creative liberties, especially when um, he held down Axe-Hand Morgan and then he lifted his head and had the sword come right to up to his neck. I was like, "Whoa,
mm-hmm,
that was
mm-hmm,
sick. That was sick."
yeah,
So I was surprised at how well they accomplished that. How well they did it. Granted, like Gum Fruit, it was very reserved and not
mm,
used a whole lot. I feel like it was
yeah.
only used like twice, I think.
Yeah, twice. Once
Yeah,
went against
in the
Axeham Morgan.
beginning,
Yeah,
and then Mihawk for
with
that
me
final
Hawk.
attack.
Right.
But yeah, other than that, it was like you know those
And
two times that he did it, it was
I'm
very well done.
actually really glad that they didn't um have him use three sword style that often because it makes it special. And I think that's kind of how it is in the anime as well. It's special. He doesn't always use three sword style, you know.
But he
So
uses it pretty often though. Like it
yeah,
was still special, but he used it more often than he did in the show.
yeah, for sure.
Um, but yeah, I think other than that, um, you know, him using two sword, I really liked how he like always held his swords like this. They
Hmm.
kind of spread them out. I don't know if that's a specific style that's used in swordsmanship in real life, but
Two
that was a
sword
really nice
style.
touch. I felt like. No, no, no. I meant
I know,
like
I
how.
know. I'm just messing with you.
All right,
I'm
bro.
messing.
All right,
I'm messing with you.
bro.
No, but yeah, I think the cinematography and technical work were very well done in this series, and it kind of came as a shock a little bit, because of what type of series this is, what they're adapting. Like we said earlier, in the stream and the recording, it this show should not work in live action. It really shouldn't, given the details of what's going on here. But they made it work. They
I
definitely
do
did.
hope that considering how long the show took from production start to release, took like
Hmm.
2 years plus.
Hmm.
Um, I hope for the sake of these actors' ages and how they age over time, they don't take too long for season two. Um,
Yeah, and with these strikes, we never know. We never know when we're
yeah,
actually gonna get season two. So it might be 2027 before we get season two.
bro,
Uh,
these actors are gonna be so old, bro. How they're gonna start. I know how the story goes. They're not gonna start off at the Grand Line right away. So the first time I'm gonna be like, so what the fuck y'all doing in the East Blue for this long,
yeah,
bro?
it's gonna be a literal time skip.
Um,
But yeah, so moving on to this next topic, I put this in there. We'll touch on this a little bit. I don't think we've been talking about the anime to live action throughout this entire recording, but anything specific that you wanted to talk about as far as anime to live action, how it translated, it worked, it didn't work, anything like
um,
that we didn't touch on.
I didn't. I heard somebody say that like it. While One Piece is very clearly not made for live action, and that no matter how well the live action can do it, it's not going to touch the anime. It's not going to touch the manga. I did see somebody say that. in a way, it also was perfect for live action compared to the others
Mm,
because unlike Death Note and Cowboy Bebop, where it's more grounded, you have very little wiggle room to work with as far as creative choices on how you present that to the live action story. But with One Piece, you have a lot of creative abilities on how to approach it. You know, how do you approach Three Swords Set? How do you approach the Gum Gum Crew? How do you approach how fishmen look? How do you approach Kuro's finger knives? You know,
mhm,
like little things like that. How do you approach um, all these different intricacies in from anime to live action? And you know, in a way, it kind of helped them gain a lot of wiggle room in how they approached it, and because of that, it went for a much more successful live action version than what Death Note and Cowboy Bebop, where they had very little wiggle room to work with because they're very grounded and real. Now, that doesn't give
mhm.
them an excuse for being as terrible as they were, but it was more gassing up One Piece. It was not trying to give an excuse to them.
I
They're
no,
both
I
garbage.
get I totally get it. I totally get that, and that is a interesting perspective. The thing about that is though, these things could have gone totally wrong. Kuro's knives and Three Sword Style and Gum Gum, these could have gone so terribly horrible. And just the team and the crew that we got for this project, they killed it. So
I think the
I commend them.
showrunner, he's a very known fan of One Piece. Like
See,
he's a super fan. He loves it.
that's what we need on
Um,
these
I'm
projects.
ironically the only actor amongst the Straw Hat crew. I'm pretty sure who had
The
never
us
seen One Piece was Inyaki, which
Yeah.
I was just like,
He ain't never I don't
okay.
even think he really even watched anime before this.
He never did. He said
Yeah.
that he never touched it until he got the job
Yeah,
as Luffy. I was just like, that's
that's
creative.
hilarious. That's
uh,
hilarious. But he did a good job though as
yeah,
Luffy.
I'm not.
So
Yeah,
he studied. He did his studying.
yeah. Um,
So but anime to live action, I'll get into um I'll get into some of the things that I wanted to talk about here in this next section is the highlights and standouts that we have for this first season here. Um, a lot of things they did right, and I wanted to talk about some of the highlights I had for the series. I feel like everything to do with Shanks and Luffy was very well done. Even though, like we said, that young Luffy actor, he wasn't the best.
charismatic.
Yeah,
He
he wasn't as charismatic. He even though he's supposed to be a different type of character when he was younger than his older
Well,
self.
no, because I read the manga first chapter earlier. Luffy
Hmm.
was very well emotional, charismatic. He was like, "I want to be on your crew. I want to be a pirate." And then later on, when he says he wants to be a pirate king, he's like, "I want to be the pirate king." Like even in the anime, you hear yell out to the top of his lungs, "I want to be the pirate king."
Yeah,
So hearing the
and
actor
that's
just being like, "I want to
yeah.
be a pirate king," I'm like, no, no. First of all, first of all, I don't know how in 10 years your accent completely changed. Like, God, holy shit.
I just know that Luffy, when he was younger, he had kind of this chip on his shoulder all the time.
Yeah,
But like when he's older, he's more happy go lucky. I feel like they got that right. He's That's definitely kind of how he was when he was younger. He kind of had an attitude, bad attitude, and he was angry all the time. And why would you let him do that to you? And stuff like that. But as the older version of Luffy, he kind of has this joy to him. You know what I'm saying. So um, I really enjoyed the Shanks and Luffy stuff, especially with the sea creature. That was a standout for me. Nami and Luffy at Arlong Park, that was a standout for me. The Sanji leaving the Baratier, I was getting choked up. I was like, that was good. That was good. Where
I
he kind
really
of had to
enjoyed
say
that.
goodbye to Zeph. Um, the I think those are my main highlights for the series. Like I said, loved Nami, loved everything to do with Nami. Her backstory was great. You know, her arc was great in those last two episodes. Um, and they paid homage to that character so well. And I those are my standouts and highlights. What standouts and
Um,
highlights did you have?
um, Everything really is a lot of things to do with Nami.
Hmm.
Seeing her talk with all these people, um, learning how to love a family like she had for her mom and her sister,
Hmm.
and um, my main standout with that was her talk with Kaya. I think having two different perspectives, her being not so rich, wanting money, wanting to get attention, and then you seeing Kaya who's just like, take it. I'm not really wanting all of this. Why
Hmm.
have all this money, no one to spend it with?
Hmm.
Um, so I really enjoyed that. Like her conversation with Kaya, that was a highlight of mine.
Hmm.
Um, Zoro versus Mihawk was probably my favorite fight sequence because it was just a lot of a lot of tension built behind it from the characters before.
Hmm.
Nami being like, "I don't want you to do this," and Luffy being like, "I can't stop him. This isn't who I am." He wants to follow his dreams. Who am I to stop him?
Hmm.
And then seeing that fight go down, it was very well done. I felt like that was awesome. Um,
Hmm.
and
Um,
then
speaking of Zoro, another one of my highlights, real quick. I kind of forgot about it, but when Luffy, towards the end of Zoro's healing from the fight, he kind of like is saying that he doesn't know what to say to Zoro, but then he kind of finds what to say and how expresses that he needs him. He needs him, on his crew.
yeah,
That was really touching as well. He was like, "How am I supposed to sleep with you doing all that talking?" Like, but I think that was a really sweet moment. And like, whenever Luffy has like these emotional and sweet moments with the Straw Hats, that is whenever like that captures my heartstrings for sure.
yeah, I really enjoyed that,
Hmm.
because throughout the whole show, I was thinking to myself, Zoro never really said he would join Luffy's crew. He's
Hmm.
just there for the ride. He
Yeah.
believes in he believes in him enough to follow him, but he's never really like that guy.
Hmm.
And I found it funny because someone made the point because Zoro never actually officially joined until halfway through episode 6. That would technically make Usopp their first member. Their first mates.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which I found was a funny point.
That is a funny point.
But that moment was really well done. I do still wish that Zoro had that moment earlier in the series where he was just like, "I'll be part of your crew, but you better not fuck up." Where you still had that Zoro still a little wary about Luffy, but he still joins the crew because that's what he needs. Um,
Hmm.
so I do wish that was there, but that moment itself was really cool.
Hmm.
Zoro being like, this is my this is my passion, this is my dream. I just showed you how willing I am to die for it. Um, and knowing that you feel the same way, backing me on my decision to go after Mihawk the way I did, I really like that. And then he says, I am your first mate. I was like, yes, bro. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
um, and this isn't really a special moment that I want to highlight, but just a
Hmm.
really cool little detail. Two cool details that they added with the show. First of all, each title card had its own rendition of each pirate. We saw one with Luffy, obviously, at the beginning of the show.
Hmm.
A buggy themed one, a Usopp themed one, Zoro, Zeph, Sanji, Nami, and Arlong. I was like, that shit is sick.
That was dope.
That shit was awesome.
That was dope.
Um, that was a really cool way to kind of differentiate, I guess you could say, with the episodes because they
Hmm.
were very clearly like specialized for that.
Hmm.
And the other detail I liked was how they presented the bounties for
Yeah, we didn't
everyone.
talk about that.
They
Yes.
showed, Alvida's bounty. We kind of see like a big burn mark on the screen with the number on it, and we see the character actually interact with the one of the posters. That was awesome to see. You see Alvida kind of smack it away with her club. You see Buggies swipe it away.
Mhm.
Curl slices it up.
Girl. Mhm.
Don Creek, shit, he just crumbles it up and just throws it away. That was funny.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
I
Mihawk.
do wish that Luffy would have had that kind of moment instead of just being handed his poster and being like, "Oh." I wish that we could have had. I thought that was building up to a moment where we saw Luffy's bounty just flying on the screen, and then Luffy grabbing it and being like, "I have a bounty."
Yeah.
uh, that would have been cool. Um,
Mhm.
but that was a cool detail. I don't know if I have any other stand up. I have a lot of stand up, but just kind of just like pinpointing it down. I can't really do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but I will
you had
say,
some good ones though. You had some good
my
ones.
I did like how Luffy's fight with Arlong went.
Mhm.
Godzilla gun looks really good.
Mhm.
Battle axe, that's what it was called. I was trying
Battle
to
Axe,
think
yeah.
of the name. Battle axe, when he used it, that was awesome.
Mhm.
Um, I really enjoyed his fight with Arlong, his second go around, and it was awesome to see. Overall, this was a really good show.
Yeah, it was. And I was shocked, but I was very happy. I was satisfied by the end. Um, so the very last shot we get of the season, we get
I should
somewhat
have put that in, bro.
we get somebody with two cigars and burning
I
Luffy's
am
bounty.
excited. I'm surprised that that's the shot they went with to tease a second season.
Me too.
I thought they would have showed the main villain for season two, not this particular character, because while he is important to the series, um, I'm sure that's mainly for the first episode. He'll probably be the season two version of Garp and Kobe,
Hmm.
following the Straw Hat along. If that's the case, that would be an interesting thing that they pull. Every season, you have a different character pulling a parallel with Luffy
Hmm.
and kind of having his own subplot. If that's the case, I hope he gets a vastly more interesting subplot than what we got with Garp and Kobe.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm sure he will.
uh, um, I thought I didn't know you were talking about that, but I was really talking about when they all proclaimed their dreams
Oh yeah,
on
that.
that barrel when they
Yeah,
all placed their
that
foot down.
was.
That was awesome because first of all, you had them cutting to the kid version of themselves and being like, I'm gonna be king of the pirates. I'm gonna find the old blue. I'm gonna build a world map. And I really like it that because in the anime and manga, it was kind of just quick with it. But in the
Hmm.
live action, they had Usopp really think about it for a second.
Hmm.
Like he had to take a step back, think about his childhood, and then he comes in and says, "I'm going to be a brave warrior."
Warrior
See,
of the
I was just
Sea.
like, "That's a nice touch." I
Yeah.
really like that they prolonged it a little bit.
Hmm.
But that was a really cool moment, just kind of like capping off the season. These guys are going to the Grand Line. They're going to find the One Piece, and they're going to take us on a journey towards the Grand Line. It's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, I do hope that I was surprised that they did not end it on another island that I hope shows up in the next in if they start the next season. I hope they started in that place because a lot of important stuff happened there. So I really hope um
Are you referring to Drum?
uh no Lowtown
Oh, okay.
because they show that in the beginning. That's where Roger got
That's where
executed.
Roger was executed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um Speaking, we didn't even touch on him. That was a great scene.
Hmm.
My only nitpick with Roger's execution was I felt like the musical cue should have been done better because they
Mm.
built up the song was building up a lot of high like dun 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 dun, and then when Roger's like wealth, fame, power, I put it all there.
Hmm.
The music should have just kept quiet, but instead the song kept going on in the background, and I was just like, okay, I don't know
Hmm.
how I'm supposed to feel. I was feeling two different things. I was like, oh, okay. And then when the song started picking up, when everyone was freaking out, I was like, all right, now I'm feeling the hype. So I felt like that little moment could have been either no music or just a completely different
Hmm.
musical cue. That was my only little gripe with that. But back on the island, I do hope that island shows up in the next season. I
Yeah.
hope we get there because well, that's very important to the story.
Very important. Yes. And that's where we meet Smoker. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
As far as season two goes, again, I think that well, as far as the Gum powers, I felt like they took a lot of creative. I hope they learned from the experience of making all of this in the original show, in this first season, and being like, okay, now we know how to play around with the Gum powers, both CGI wise, choreography wise. I hope they enhance that for season two. Like I said, um, I guess another improvement would be just to create a more interesting subplot, and I hope they
Mhm.
get a higher budget. To be honest, because I feel like the more you get into the story, if they can, there needs to be more episodes. Like I think 10 episodes would be perfect for this next season.
Yeah,
It would have
I
been perfect
agree.
for this season, to be honest. Um, but even more so next season, just add more episodes. Make it like 10
Hmm.
or something. Something like 10 feels like a good spot. Um,
I agree.
to put it at. So I hope they get more budget, not just to build more sets, because I know that's what they're going to do. That's probably the first thing they're going to do as soon as they get the green light for the season two. Let's build these new islands. Let's build these new sets, wardrobes. But just more money for CGI, more money for um, uh, choreograph choreograph fights, like just being able
Hmm.
to find more professionals to be able to help them with that. And I do hope
Yeah.
that that's what they do. I hope this series gets a season two. I know it probably is already confirmed for season two. I think it's like all but confirmed. Like unless
Hmm.
the show falls off the face of the earth in the next couple of weeks, which I doubt it will.
It
But
won't.
if it does, if it stays afloat for these next couple of weeks, which I'm sure it will, it'll probably get itself a season two, and I'm really hoping that that's the case. I think that it'll be really good for this series and
Yeah,
just
this.
overall.
Yeah, I hope this next season does get some more budget for the CGI because we're going to be introducing a character that I know is going to be CGI.
Yeah,
Um,
there's no practical
part of
effecting
part of
around that
part of the Straw
unless
Hat
you
crew,
unless you
aka
drastically
the
change
best
you.
Straw Hat.
I um
Tony Chopper. But anyway, we're gonna wrap it up here. We had a great discussion. If you guys have seen the live action One Piece, let us know down in the comments. What are your thoughts? What are your highlights and standouts for the show? What you love about it? What you dislike about it? I am AJ of AJ Reacts 2. Thank you for watching Nerd Talk tonight, and we out of here.